So I want to talk about what's going on right now. Just like everybody else is. I have done what I can, what I felt I could do, posting on a daily basis. I've had a lot of friends come against me who don't agree with what I have to say. Family. All because I don't agree with the narrative. As a black man, I'm proud of who I am. And I hear family members, I hear people on TV, out on the street, talking about what it means to be black, how hard it is to be black in America. And I've even had people now come at me and say, well, I don't really understand what it is to be black because I grew up around white people, or because I'm half black, half white. Here's something that you guys may not know about us Happas or halflings. We never fit in. And this doesn't matter whether you're black, half white, whether you are half black, half Asian, or half white, half Asian, or Hispanic. It doesn't matter. At some point in our life, we were never good enough to be black or white. It's something you come to just live with, that you will never be good enough for anybody else. Now, when you're with family, you can tend to it not be as big of an issue, but it still comes up. So to be told I'm not black enough or I'm not really black is not going to do anything for me. It's not. I came to that grip a long time ago. I didn't listen to black music. I didn't talk black. I didn't look the part to be black. I was too light skinned. My facial features weren't black enough. I didn't seem black to anybody. Which is why I'm really, really, really happy we have President Obama. Because every excuse or every reason I was ever given growing up is then null and void. Because Obama went to a really rich school. He lived around white people. He was raised by his white grandma. I was raised by my father. So, black man, great godly man. So all the excuses that were ever given to me why I wasn't black enough, they stopped working. So I don't care if I'm not black enough because I don't agree with the movement. I don't agree with how it's being done. We want to sit there and justify evil being done. Where do we get off with that? And we invoke names like Martin Luther King Jr. for what's going on right now. Now I live in New York. You know what I've seen in New York? Terror. For those who aren't out there protesting, for those who are just trying to go to work every day, trying to take care of their kids every day. Terror. People who are scared. Not knowing if the protests are coming closer will erupt into riots as the hour gets closer and closer to curfew. Knowing full well that the protesters who are out there at 7:30 have no intention of being inside during curfew. Which then in and of itself is already asking for there to be an issue. That's what I see in New York. Right now in New York, I see black men going to work, coming on, since we all wear masks on the train. Some have surgical masks, some have rags, some just have black masks. Come on the train and watching people shudder for a second. And watching these men ignore it We want to sit there and say that what we're doing is for the memory of George Floyd. It's not. It's not. Destroying our community is not a memory of anybody. I've had a lot of people over the last week talk to me and try to justify things from history, whether it would be saying that cops have always been evil and we can't do anything about the cops, so they're all gone. Start from scratch. Saying that the riots that ensued after Martin Luther King was assassinated is what changed things in America. But those are lies. We don't even know our own history. I'm talking our history. Whether you're black in America, white in America, Asian in America, Spanish, everything in between. If you were born in this country, if you came to this country and became a citizen, this is your history. You're an American. This is American history, right? Don't be trying to sit there and say, oh, white history. Oh, it's black. Shut up. Stop. Stop being divisive for the sake of being divisive. All right? It doesn't help anyone. We sit there and want to sit there and tell ourselves or be told or make excuses that we're being held back. How many times have I been told, well, Ray, you don't count because you're half white, you get it easier? Really? Because I walk in and all of a sudden anyone who's black will always try and tell me I'm not black enough for them. I'm not really black. But I'm not walking into any white area, quote unquote, being told, oh, hey, what's up? No. In areas like ours, people see color. Why do people want to see color? Why? Growing up as a child, I was taught by my parents. White mother, remember? White mother from California. Black daddy. Born in Selma, Alabama during the Civil Rights Movement, right? Born in it. At the point where he was at the church and was pastored by the man who asked Martin Luther King to come to Selma. But you wouldn't know that man's name because he never fit the narrative. You saw the movie Selma? He's not in it. Why isn't he mentioned? The man who was instrumental in the teachers' strikes in Selma, Alabama. Instrumental in bringing Martin Luther King Jr. to Selma. Instrumental in the prayers that helped move the movement forward. But we won't talk about that part. Our history in America when it comes to civil rights. We don't want to talk about the fact that it was a God-led movement. Men and women who pushed the movement forward through prayer. We don't want to talk about that. When people want to sit there and say, we can't do anything if racism and racist cops are in our way. Tell that to Martin Luther King Jr. Tell that to Reverend Reese. These men and the women of God marched and prayed. They were met with evil acts. They were met with institutional racism. Cops, police commissioners, captains, police chiefs, firefighters, paramedics, state officials, governor, mayor, people part of the Klan, everything around them said, I hate you, you will not go forward. Entire institution in the South saying, we will not let you out. I've watched my white friends post videos, or not videos, I would say, memes, essentially. Memes make you feel good. Hey, I'm with you. I'm with my friends of color. You know what's really funny about the term friends of color? Or should I say people of color? If you take the phrase people of color, rearrange it, put the color in front, all right? And then take the O-F from of, put it right behind the R in color, and replace the O with an E, and replace the F with a D, you just get colored people. Now, I know enough that if someone says, I like colored people, That'll get some people extremely angry, and they will be incited because of racism. But you say people of color. Oh no, that's much better. That's inclusive. Can we stop this, please? Can we stop using words to hide agendas? Can we stop invoking past words to justify evil today? We need to stop it. Especially, this word right here, this is for Christians. If you aren't a Christian, if you don't pray, if you're an atheist, it's okay. No hate. No hate. Right? Doesn't matter to you. But if you call yourself a Christian and you're walking in the world and doing things the way the world does things, I'm going to have to tell you, check yourself. Check yourself. Check about the Bible. Don't take my word for it. What does the Bible say? We need to sit there and ask ourselves if we're Christians, right? Mind you, if you're not a Christian, again, no hate. Disregard this part because it doesn't matter to you. But if you call yourself a Christian, ask yourself this question. Is the church you belong in, does it believe the Bible? Then ask yourself, do the people I surround myself with, do they believe the Bible? Then ask yourself, do you believe the Bible? Because if the answer is, I do believe the Bible, then you don't get to put your opinions in things. You don't. You have to say, do by what the word says. That's what Martin Luther King Jr. did. That's what the men and women in the civil rights movement did. They checked what they were doing by the word of God. And that's one part of our history. Black, white, doesn't matter. American history, we do not like to talk about. We pick out all the stuff that sounds good. Free at last, free at last. Thank God we're free at last. We hear that a lot. I got a dream. We hear those parts. Do you know the whole I have a dream speech? Do you? Do you know what Martin Luther King Jr. said in those words? I ask this question because I think a lot of people don't know this. Or if they did know it, they've forgotten what he said. Because what is being reflected today, what has been reflected in, for my lifetime, right? I have to say, we have failed. We were given a gift that my grandmother marched for, my aunties marched for. I even had aunts walk for, right? They marched for my rights. I can say my family marched for my rights. We were given a gift. What do we do with that gift? I just want to read one thing, and that will be done if you made it this far. Because at this point, you may have decided, I'm not going to mess with you anymore. Ray, you were cool. We had good times. I just can't roll with you no more. That may be what you're saying. I respect it. But if you did make it this far, I want to read to you the I Have a Dream speech. And then you can decide for yourself whether or not we have reflected this, if we've lived up to this, if we've carried this on, and if right now all the rioting right now, because we can say there are peaceful protesters, right? We can say that. We can say the looters are different than the protesters, as the rioters are different from the protesters. But let's be honest. The rioters and looters are amongst the protesters. Now, if you're watching from a place or a city where this isn't a problem, okay, fine. But where I'm living and going out in, having to work in, I'm telling you right now. Now, I don't know what you saw in the news. People destroyed the city. Destroyed it. Things that, in places where my wife and I met and dated, places where she grew up and just had memories of, destroyed. For what? What does destroying businesses around your community do? Nothing. In my neighborhood, I've had Targets and grocery stores boarded up just in case the rioting got to us, which meant we could not buy things we needed. So hurting black lives, because there's a 1% rule. One drop, you black. That's what we were told. Except unless it's inconvenient, then you don't get to have the rights which you were blessed with. But who blessed me with those rights? Sure wasn't a Democrat. Sure wasn't any white people telling me they needed to tell me they were sorry for their white privilege. Which, in fact, not to get a rabbit trail too quickly, but those who have insinuated or outright said, that they are so sorry for their white privilege to my face. I have one question. If you are my friend, were you racist the entire time? Because then you weren't my friend. That means you were looking down on me. And I will not have friends around me who look at me and say, Ray, I'm white, you're black, half white, whatever. And I'm so sorry, but I'm better than you. And I'm sorry that I'm better than you because I was born white. And I have a better lot in life than you. And you will never be able to achieve your dreams or anything you want because you're tainted. Oh my gosh, tainted. And I'm sorry that you will never achieve anything or only be able to get to the bottom of my foot. How dare you? How dare you look down on me? You're not better than me. In fact, during this whole shutdown, especially here in New York, I've been working off the clock, round the clock, since we shut down. I haven't stopped working. Don't give me that. But that's a whole other thing. Let me read to you Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous I Have a Dream speech that everybody is invoking. The last line of. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon, light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself exiled in his own land. So we have come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of this Constitution, of the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir, i.e., inheritor of. Because you're American, those rights are yours, and nobody can say otherwise. Not a Democrat, not a Republican, nobody. You're American, they are your rights. Your country, your rights. You're owed them. The note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, Martin Luther King, that is not a very popular idea, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's obvious today that America has defaulted on its promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring the sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we have come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hollowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make the real promise of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of this moment. The sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negro need to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. Sounds right familiar? There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwind of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there is something I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to distrust all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. And they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the city. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating "for whites only." We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and the Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No. We are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of the northern cities. Knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed, let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It's a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We will hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. No man is above another man. No woman is above another woman. No man is above another woman. No woman's above a man. Equal. Those are his words, invoked by our forefathers. I have a dream that one day the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, and will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racist, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, that one day right down in Alabama, little black boys and little black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that we'll go back to the South with. I will go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be singing. We will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. My land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring." And if America is to be a great nation, this must be true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from the Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from the Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last." Now you tell me, if you made this far to listen to MLK's words, which we've been invoking over this nation for the last week and a half. And this is to the Christians right now. Those who grew up in Christian households. Those who call themselves Christians. Is this what you're doing? Throughout his speech, throughout all of his speeches, which most of them were actually sermons, he invoked biblical imagery. He invoked truth. Biblical truth in his words. What are you going to do? If you're black in America, have you read this speech? Do you know these words? How much of this have we squandered? If you're in your 30s, like I am, you are the first, or part of the first generation to be born in a world where you did not suffer like your grandparents, or maybe your parents did. My dad drank out of a colored water fountain. My dad remembers that. When was the last time I drank out of a colored water fountain? Never. When was the last time I was denied service because of the color of my skin? Never. When was the last time I was denied anything because of the color of my skin? Never. And I've had my share with racial run-ins. I've been a victim of white violence on black. Ask yourself these questions. Have you, black, white, in between, taken these words to heart and tried to live out these values, which are all biblical values? And if something is a biblical value and you try to live it out apart from its biblical source, you won't get the end result, because you're making a cake without flour. You can't do that.